Welcome back to the Comics Cube, everyone. I am here with both Ron Randall and Karl Kesel, and we are talking about their Kickstarters for Impossible Jones 2C and Trekker. I know the title of this right now. I already backed it. Blood in the Wind.
There you go.
Blood in the Wind. Yeah.
Whew, that was close.
2C was easier to remember.
I'll make a note of that.
My title is so exciting. Impossible Jones 2C. It just can't compete. Blood in the Wind. Who's going to buy a book called Blood in the Wind?
I was like reckoning on. No, wait. That was the last one.
Ron's problem is he comes out with these too damn often. And they start blurring. I have a nice wide gap between my books.
Prior to asking you guys about that, I would like to ask the two of you. The two of you are obviously very close. How did you meet?
We met at the Kubert School,
Yeah.
1,001 years ago. And my memory is, back then the school was like on this 3-storied mansion, old mansion, rundown mansion in Dover, New Jersey. And the class, the freshman class was divided into 2 parts because of the first half of the alphabet names were on the first floor and second half on the second floor. So I was on floor 2, Karl was on floor 1. So we didn't interact a whole lot in that first year, but a year or two later, we both bumped into each other in line to see I wanted to say it was a Tex Avery film festival, Karl, but was that it?
Most likely Tex or Chuck Jones. Might have been. It was probably one of those film festivals that the Thalia had in the Upper East Side, Upper West Side.
Right, Upper West Side. And as I recall, we just struck up a conversation in line, waiting to get to the the theater, and it just sort of hit it off. So it's kind of been a good friendship ever since.
Yeah. No, I mean, I knew Ron in the 1 year. I only stayed at the Kubert School 1 year. Ron was there the whole time, but I knew Ron. But like I said, he said he was upstairs, so we did not have a lot of interaction. We would kind of like circle around each other and stuff. But yeah, and I knew Ron was a good guy. But that was until we reconnected at Thalia. You're right, Ron. We really didn't have a strong relationship, strong friendship.
Do you remember what that conversation was that got you to become friends?
It's really silly. My memory is we were standing on the sidewalk outside, and one of us said, "Oh, we're waiting in the queue," and the other one said, "Oh, queue," because not that many people are using that term, at least in the States. And that was the first. Oh, we know the same sort of slightly obscure reference.
You have a much better memory than me. I never would have remembered that. Never.
But and then it was just a matter of just realizing we were sort of I guess I'd say sort of kindred spirits in a lot of ways. A lot of if you're a fellow aspiring comic book artist, you've got a lot of common ground already, and then you find out that a lot of our temperaments were aligned sort of, and we had sort of complementary sort of overlapping interest in our favorite creators. They weren't the same, but there was an overlap. So there was that sort of stimulating a certain amount of, commonality, but then bringing in different influences and perspectives that the other guy had. Plus, Karl was just really talented. And I remember not that long after that, I was getting the gig for penciling the Arak monthly book at DC, and we were looking for an inker. And I had Karl and another chap named Rick Magyar do samples of my work to try to get a good inker and a good buddy to be an inker on the book. They went with Rick for me, but Karl, I don't know if it happened almost at the same time. Wasn't it Karen Berger that tagged you to ink Legion of Superheroes?
Well, first there was Sal Amendola who got me into the talent showcase venue. But yeah, very soon after that, Karen latched onto me for Legion of Superheroes. So that was very fortunate. But I remember inking those samples of Ron. Yeah. You had a cat gal who looked amazingly like Nastasia Kinski.
Yeah, amazingly like, yeah.
And she's obviously a model you have used more often.
Ooh, yeah, a little bit.
I'm still a little blown away by the fact that there were Tex Avery and Chuck Jones film festivals, but
Yeah, those were great. They were
I'm still
great.
there 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And those some of those Chuck Jones cartoons, they probably just can't show anymore. You know, I mean, a
No,
lot of what they
yeah.
were showing because of some of the attitudes and stereotypical depictions of minorities, they just can't show
Mhm.
anymore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's totally understandable. It's kind of sad because there's some genuinely brilliant cartooning and animating going on there, but you can certainly understand, given the content and the times we're living in.
Mhm.
Nope, can't do it.
There's one in particular I remember that was about Chuck Jones must have done a series about this bear family, and there's one where I guess it's the father bear. Things get so out of hand, he decides to commit suicide and like jumps off a cliff. I mean, his intent is to kill himself. And I mean, we were all on the floor laughing so hard, but you just don't see comics like or cartoons like that anymore, do you?
No, you do not. I think I don't know, but I don't think so.
Not where I look, at least.
No,
Yeah.
me either. Yeah.
Speaking of cartoons you don't see anymore, one of them is I don't think there's ever been a cartoon quite like Popeye the Sailor Man, and you guys know where I'm going with this.
I don't know. Oh, well, I think maybe I know where you're going. Go ahead, keep going.
The two of you collaborated on a story in Action Comics with Captain Strong.
Yeah.
What was that like drawing essentially a Superman up, essentially a Fleischer characters crossover?
Yeah. Well, so that story came about because our mutual pal and mutual Kubert School buddy, Craig Boldman, is a huge Popeye fan. And he was writing some Superman stories for Julie Schwartz. And he came up with the story for Superman crossing paths with Captain Strong. And he said it in the Bahamas for two reasons. One, we could call the story Traumas in the Bahamas, which you just can't resist. And then the other was it let Craig and I got to go down to the Bahamas and go on what they call a barefoot cruise, where you're on a four-masted schooner sailing around the islands. And we did that as research for the story. So that was a double win for us. And then we brought Karl in to ink it because it kept it all within the Kubert School family.
And I know
So
Craig tried to get a colorist from the Kubert School, and
Yes.
Julie was bending, but only so far, only so far.
Yeah. And you say what was it like? So, and the main thing I remember working on the book was, when I was a little kid, I would be lying on the floor of my grandmother's house with a piece of butcher paper on the floor and some crayons. And I remember drawing pictures of Superman, in that classic, like from the old 1950s TV show sort of pose of him flying straight, horizontally with his arms out in front of him, his feet behind him. And I guess the little wires that were pulling the cape a little bit to make it look like it was blowing in the wind. And there was a panel in this story that we did where I was able to draw that same pose of, I think he was flying underwater or something, but it was that same shot of Superman flying sideways. I thought, I'm drawing the same comic book now for money for DC Comics. The same drawing that I was drawing on my grandma's phone with a crayon on butcher paper. So that was a very vivid imagery. I still have that page, not going to ever part with that one. It was just such a thrill.
When I've interviewed the two of you in the past, I have asked you to talk about your respective properties, Impossible Jones and Trekker. I think what would be fun right now, for the benefit of everybody who hasn't watched those interviews or listened to those interviews, is to ask you them again, except I would like to ask you to describe each other's books.
Oh,
I saw that coming.
yeah.
That's a good one though. Karl, do you want to go first or shall I?
Sure, I'll go first. Why not? So Ron Randall has been doing Trekker for, I happen to know, 35 years now. And thanks to Kickstarter, though, he's been able to do it a lot more regularly, and I would say a lot more successfully than ever before. I think him taking the reins of the character has really propelled it forward. And Trekker is the story of Mercy St. Clair, a 23rd century bounty hunter. Bounty hunters are called trekkers. And that's kind of the high concept, but Ron's got a much bigger, grander plan in mind, where she is a trekker in another way, in that she's on a very spiritual journey throughout these books. And she starts in one place, and by the time it gets done, probably in 25 years, I don't know, she'll be in another place. And you can see this incrementally from book to book to book. And that does not mean that she sits around doing yoga and stuff like that. I mean, she's fighting monsters, she is fighting terrorists, she is finding out that the world is not what she thinks it is. She's finding out her own history. She's falling in love. She's discovering who she is as a person. And Ram does it with great dynamics and great storytelling and great heart. There's, I think, more than anything else, great heart in his work. And I think that more than anything else is what gets people to come back time and again for new Trekker books.
There have been 17 Trekker books, am I correct? This will be the 18th?
I kind of have a hard time keeping track of them, but that's probably not too far off. Books meaning complete, adventure stories. Sometimes they were serialized. The first ones are serialized in Dark Horse Presents. So it was, 3 8-page chapters in 3 different books. But I count that as one Trekker book or one Trekker story. It's kind of hard to figure out how to total them all up. But they're all available on the Kickstarter. I have one big hardcover book that collects all those earlier stories I was sort of told almost more piecemeal because it was hard getting it out on a regular basis. So that's collected in one hardcover. And then there have been 5 so far trade paperbacks of new stories beyond what's in that hardcover. And 6 of those new stories is the one that's running right now. So it depends on how you want to count it. how many Trekker stories have been.
Karl, how do you feel that Ron has had this much body of work for this one property for the past 35 years?
Well, I'm very impressed and very jealous. I mean, the idea of really, that used to be how cartoonists work. I mean, someone like Kniff, someone like Hal Foster, they had a life work of, Terry or Steve Canyon or Prince Valiant. Even, when you go to like Kirby, he would work 10 years, 8 years on Fantastic Four. I mean, this sort of long stretch on a character is very rare nowadays, except for like Eric Larson, who's been doing Savage Dragon since he was like born. But I mean, it used to be that's what you aspired to. You'd find your niche and you would just stay with it. And I admire Ron that he's found his niche, and he my God, he sticks to his guns. He just sticks to it. And I'm never going to have 17 Impossible Jones books. It just takes me too long to get it out. But I mean, there is part of me that is aspiring to that. I mean, I'm aspiring to have that shelf of Impossible Jones books.
Ron, how would you describe Impossible Jones?
Well, if superhero comic books is about coming up with new takes and characters with, maybe their powers aren't entirely new, never been seen before, but they're approached from a different angle. And what makes a new superhero rich is some vividness of character, just things that we haven't seen done quite that way before. Because let's face it, the world is crowded full of superheroes. It's not easy to make a new one that feels new. You know what I mean? That feels, oh, this is fresh. I haven't thought of them or seen it quite like this before. That's what Karl does with Impossible Jones. Karl has a passionate love for, like the classic, Lee Kirby sort of Marvel, comic books back when Marvel was lean and young and fresh, and it felt spontaneous and like you're shooting from the hip, which you can get away with when you've got great ideas like Lee and Kirby and Ditko had. And I haven't felt anything like that joy in reading a superhero comic in decades. And Impossible Jones came out, and it's like a breath of fresh air. It really is. And what Karl, working with David Hahn, the artist on it, have done is create this superhero universe that feels fresh and exciting and just crammed full of good ideas, great characters that you hear about them and you want to laugh right away, or you're just, I need to know more about this character. It's just so rich and deep, and it feels like it's something that's been percolating in Karl for decades. And I think it has, since some of the characters are ones that he created when he was a kid. And I've seen some of those, sort of the early childhood drawings of, like, these characters like Polecat. Polecat, who Karl, when he was a kid, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's like Yeah, oh, that's a cool name for a character. Karl had no idea that Polecat was, a Wild West term for what it was.
Skunk.
A skunk, right? So he just thought it was a guy with a pole. So that's who the hero is, and that's what's so charming about it. You can just take these wacky ideas, and he somehow threads it into this universe that's compelling and believable. And in the way that I try to anchor Trekker, the series Trekker, about the hero, around the hero Mercy St. Clair, Karl has this wonderful cast of vivid, colorful characters, but Impossible Jones she's a through character. She's the one who, she's a thief, but she gets mistaken for being a superhero when she gains superpowers through one of those classic accidents, that happens in comics only. And her sort of playing both ends against the middle, so to speak. The heroes think that she's a hero, so she goes with it, but then she's got this alliance, sometimes uneasy with some of the shadier characters too. So she's in that nether realm where she's not all one or all the other, and so that she's just a character that's got a lot of potential for growth, and the stories can go anywhere. It's absolutely delightful. I know that Karl, I just saw he posted something online about the new Star Trek series, Strange New Worlds. Mm-hmm. And Karl isn't the first one to say this, and I felt exactly the way when I watched the show, and I know other people who are huge Star Trek fans have felt the same way. It's like watching Strange New Worlds is as exciting and invigorating as it was watching the original Star Trek series, and nothing since then has had that same sense of whatever you want to call it. I call it sort of an optimism, without being simplified and dumbed down and simplistic and childlike, but there's heart there. And I feel the same way with Impossible Jones when it's sort of doing the superhero comics. That it's, while it's not full of sweetness and light exactly, but there is that sort of grim, overly serious, ponderous tone that so many comics these days have that I find kind of wearying, frankly.
There's a timelessness to it too, right? Because I think when I first heard about Impossible Jones, a part of me was like, how did this name not exist before now?
Yeah, that's what I think when Captain Lightning, Holly Days. They're just, these characters have these wonderful names. The Polecat maybe is the peerless
Polecat.
You can't beat that, Yeah. And his character, even Steven, which is it's a real Ditko-esque character. There's no question about it. It seems to me he's just like this very, very uncompromising guy, and he's got his rigid set of morals about wanting to, good will always win in a fair fight against evil, and it's a great character, and it sort of feels like this character should have been around since 1962.
But I think the difference between that and a Ditko character is that Ditko is Spider-Man aside, he's not exactly what I would call a fun person.
I understand.
But even Steven, just with the name alone, is like, that's fun.
There's a certain playfulness, a certain sense of just the joy of discovery that I get when I read almost any line of dialogue that Karl writes. There's just some little twist, there's some little panache going on there that I just, I get a sense that Karl is just thrilled when he stumbles across that particular wordplay or that particular turn of phrase, or bringing that phrase back in a different context 5 pages later, and that sense of enthusiasm and joy of discovery sort of pops off the page, which is one of the things that keeps the story so lively and invigorating to read.
Karl, your story is set on on planet Earth. Ron, yours is set all over space, but there is a commonality between the way you execute things, which is that I feel just jumping right into your comics, there is already a sense of place and a sense of completeness to the place. Like you've already done the world building as well as a complete cast of characters. Can you two talk about your differing approaches to world building and making sure that everything feels realized, I suppose is the right word.
I don't know about Ron, but I mean, it could be that some of this came from our Cubert School training. I mean, I certainly know clarity of storytelling is very important to me, and I know that came from the Cubert School. And I think so part of that clarity is, what is this world we're working in, right? And and as you lay out certain pieces, you start to see how they do or do not fit together. Although I say that, and at the same time, I have to say I work very instinctively. And so if I suddenly, have this idea that, well, we have the Coffee Cop Cafe in Impossible Jones, and I just really like the name Coffee Cop and the idea that there was this coffee shop that the cops hung out at. And in the one I'm kickstarting now, a lot of it actually happens in the Coffee Cop Cafe, where Polecat and Impossible Jones drink coffee and talk. But that means we had to figure out the backstory of Coffee Cop Cafe. And I have to say, it's become a really interesting place. And I think I am going to be approaching somebody about writing little short stories set in the cafe, just because people come and go. It's a perfect setting for stories. But I mean, I think that happens is if you have a few ideas that spark you, and you start to see how they come together. That's what creates a successful world.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, in a way, it sort of feels, well, there's a couple of things I was going to say. One is that Karl is absolutely right. I'm sure a lot of what we both pulled away from the Kubert School was that Joe's passion for great, vivid, compelling storytelling. That's the most important thing to Joe is you grab your reader by their collar in the first panel and you pull them into your story and you don't let them go until you get to the end. Then they can go but they're going to have had such a great experience that they're going to come back for more of it. I think that was really what Joe was all about. But part of that is once you've got them into that story, you've got to keep them there. And part of keeping them there is you keep the story feeling credible, on its own terms. If it's a superhero story, you have to, make certain concessions to reality. People can punch each other through brick walls or whatever it is, right? But you've got a certain set of rules that you've set up so that everything that takes place in that story, you can think, yeah, that checks, given the rules we're playing with. And then, Joe drew a lot of like Sergeant Rock books, and Joe was very invested in making sure that everything that happened in those books was as historically accurate as necessary to sustain that sense of belief or disbelief or whatever it is, even when characters are doing kind of outlandish things within the context even of a war story. And I think that that you carry that with you when you leave Joe's school. You say you can't, you can't violate the rules you set up for within your own series, or it just erodes the credibility and you'll lose your audience that way. And the other thing I think about it is sometimes when people talk about trying to write a theme or a moral or a message into their stories, the more I think about it, I definitely don't try to do that on a conscious level, because my belief is that whatever my worldview, my philosophy, my values are, that's going to come out in the story regardless, just by the way characters interact and the things that happen in the story. Making that a conscious goal turns it away from being storytelling and turns it into something more like, I don't know, propaganda or something like that. And so I think that same internal sense of what's real, what's believable, then informs the choices that I make for how I'm going to establish a new world or build a new spaceship or introduce a new character in Trekker. Like Karl, I like to work. I like to be open to the spontaneous new ideas and inspirations. I may have the story arc for Trekker worked out for the next several years, but there's plenty of room within that. If I'm inspired by a conversation I hear or something I see in a movie or read in a book, I can think that's a little bit, I can thread that somehow into Trekker. I can find a way to make that fit in there. And I can also see a lot of cool things. They say that's really cool. That will not work within the rules that I've set up for the Trekker universe. So it's just about selecting the details that are going to fit.
Mm-hmm.
Karl, you this is the third of four team up books with Impossible Jones. So you've had her team up with Holly Days, Captain Lightning, and now the Peerless Polecat.
The Peerless Polecat. And
Thank you.
Credit where it's due. Kurt Busiek came up with the adjective peerless.
Oh wow! So, did you what can you tell us about what's coming in this book?
Well, it teams up Impossible Jones and Polecat. Polecat is more or less Daredevil with a bow staff. Just think. And I say that his only superpower is that everybody really likes it. He's just this really likable guy. And in many ways, he is Impossible Jones' Jiminy Cricket. He, how much he knows about what she is or isn't doing, that's a big question mark. But it's very clear he constantly pokes her to go in the right direction, to make the right choice. And so that's kind of the interesting dynamic between them. And during the course of this story, they're investigating a series of hauntings that are happening. And Polecat, very much a people person, he wants to help the store owners who are being haunted. And so he brings in Impossible Jones, mostly because he hates doing stakeouts by himself. And they get to talking. We find out Polecat has a long lost love, and we learn about her. Her name is Hellhound. They used to be a team. They're kind of the Black Widow Daredevil team kind of thing. And she's not around anymore. And you basically learn the story of their relationship as they're waiting for the ghosts to show up. And so really, it's on that level. It's about ghosts and other things that haunt us that we don't let go of. And, it's hard to judge your own work, but I'm really happy with this story. And it's a 48-page story. And believe me, we didn't start out to make it a 48-page story. We were like aiming for a 24, 28-page story. And there was just a lot that needed to be told.
Yeah.
And so we decided we were going to tell it. And it's 48 pages long. And I think every page is essential. I don't think there's any padding in it. I think every page is interesting and exciting, and David's doing a great job. And I can't wait for people to read it.
It's an interesting thing you say that Polecat is kind of like her Jiminy Cricket, and he's just very likable. Whereas, in the previous book, we kind of see Captain Lightning try to make sure that, she stays on the right side. Is the fact that does Polecat succeed a little bit more, primarily because he's significantly more likable than Captain Lightning?
It's hard to say. I don't know. I mean, Captain Lightning doesn't have a lot of patience for Impossible Jones. I think that's the huge difference between the two. Polecat has a lot of patience for everybody. He kind of takes everybody on their own terms, and Captain Lightning takes everybody on his terms. And so, I mean, Impossible Jones is just kind of annoying to him. And when he has to work with her, he has to. But anyways, I don't know if Polecat's, I actually think that's the biggest question about their relationship is he going to succeed? That's really the biggest question.
Ron, what can we expect from Blood in the Wind?
In some ways, more of the same. That is to say, it's every one of the Trekker stories is supposed to be, sort of aspiring to be sort of a classic feeling action adventure story with some swashbuckling in it, and some high adventure sense of new places to explore and that stuff. But I also try to make everyone different as far as the setting and the type of challenges that the character Mercy St. Clair faces, and also taking her farther on this road, this journey that she's on, where she began as a lone wolf. She was a bounty hunter. She went out and shot somebody and got paid for it, and she was perfectly happy to have life stay like that. But life tends to get more complicated for us all, and it tends to break us open and break us down as we go on. And Mercy's had several adventures by now where that sort of stuff has happened to her. So now she's initially it sort of happened without her even knowing about it. She was gradually being pulled onto a larger stage, and that process is well underway now, where she's being called to step onto this the area of larger conflicts. It's not just about bringing in the bad guy to get enough money to feed yourself and your pet fox. It's starting to interact with the larger forces that are shaping the way her civilization is going. And this book is a crucial step in that. She has sought some answers into her past, hoping that would give her the way forward for herself, because she's not an easy team player. But you can't go and face giant structures all on your own. So she knows that she has to make some kind of alliances, which is hard for her to do. So she's sort of been looking for that. So in this one, she follows some leads, and it takes her to a new setting for Trekker. She's had urban battles, she's been on swamp planets and that stuff. Now she goes to this frozen world, and recently I've introduced a sort of a nemesis character for her, the leader of the ruling council strike force called the Amber Swarm, and it's led by this woman named Null. And I think every good hero needs to have a good primary opponent that can come back and sort of infuse the story with making it personal. as Mercy's challenges and the obstacles she's facing, it becomes this larger sort of a systemic sort of, system-wide thing. Having a human face to put on that she can go toe to toe with. That's the way I tell my stories. And in this one, I somehow I got the idea that it would be sort of exhilarating to have Mercy have strap on some like a personal glider up in these frozen mountaintops and have a dogfight with somebody else in that environment. So that's kind of the climactic action set piece of the story. So I hope it works both in that, it's a cool sort of visceral, fun action adventure story, but also by the time this story is resolved, Mercy's in a different place than she was at the beginning of it on this longer journey that she's on.
35 years and 17 books later, how do you continue to come up with new settings?
That's a good question. First of all, I got to say about the 35 years, because it frankly sounds embarrassing to think, why is it taking you so damn long to tell this story, Ron? Well, it wasn't 35. It hasn't been 35 uninterrupted years of Trekker story. The longest gap I had was 12 years when I didn't do a thing on Trekker for 12 solid years, because I was waiting to find a way to get back to the series when I could tell it in this way that Kickstarter is allowing me to do, a series of ongoing self-sustained, graphic novels. You thread them all together and it traces the arc of the character. But anyway, so yeah, 35 years, and how do the new stories keep coming? I know it's largely
specifically. I was like,
the settings. Well,
wow.
I just I was lucky enough to start off with this conceit of a bounty hunter, because as a bounty hunter tracks down one bad guy after another, that can take you into different settings. First you're in the city, then you're tracking somebody down in the blasted wastelands outside of the city. Then you take a trip off planet and you go to one sort of planet, and then you're off planet again, and maybe something happens within the confines of a spaceship. And every planet you go to can have sort of different settings, can have different climates, political situations going on, all that sort of stuff. And you can ride around in different kinds of vehicles and use different kind of gadgets. So it's kind of open-ended in that regard. For this one, I remember I was driving down 101 when I was trying to think of what this story was going to have in it. I knew the broad strokes of Mercy needs to go out and seek alliances, and it's going to go a certain way. But when it comes to the specific little elements of it, and I was driving along and I saw like one of those glider planes going over the highway, and I thought, something up in the air would be cool. And that, so I just that's one of those cases where that sort of moment of inspiration was something I was able to thread into the story, and I think it really sort of, for me, it energized it a lot, because we've never seen Mercy sort of flying around up in the air like that. And so a part of it is just the need on my part to do things a little bit different every time. So out of desperation, I have to find a new setting.
Do you two ever bounce ideas off each other like this? Or like, for example, with Blood in the Wind, do you talk to Karl? Karl would, with the Polecat team up, do you talk to Ron while you're creating it? Or
Well, we send a lot of ideas back and forth on different levels. A lot about the Kickstarters. How to do your Kickstarter, how to reach people. What are you doing now? Is this working for you? My God, I just lost all these people today. Blah blah blah. Or I just had this big sale or whatever. I mean, on that level, we do a lot of back and forth. As far as the comics themselves, I know sometimes I send Ron my outlines or ideas and get his feedback on those. And I have read Ron's stuff before he's finished it too. So I guess we do a lot of give and take. I thought there was very little, but I guess there is quite a bit.
Yeah, I think in most of our cases, I know for me, I'll just speak for me, Trekker is an intensely personal project, and the one thing that sustained me for all these years is it just comes deep inside of me, and it feels in some ways sort of very fragile, that it has to be sort of my vision, so I do seek input and feedback on certain aspects of it, but it's always how can I put it? I have to be careful about how I do that, because I can't sometimes somebody will suggest an idea to me that sounds like it's a good idea, but it's not my idea. So I have to be careful how and when I go about, soliciting input and stuff like that. Like I have no trouble. I often show Karl like cover roughs. He has a much better sense for what makes a good cover than I do. I'm pretty clueless about that stuff in a lot of ways. But a lot of the initial stuff sort of has to come from me, it feels like. And then I show it to people like Karl, obviously to the editor that I've hired to work with on this thing, to, smooth out some rough edges, to point out, errors in logic or little plot holes or maybe huge plot holes that have just, gone off my radar. So it's important for me to get the right sort of feedback and input, but it sort of has to happen at the right times.
Got it. You two launched your Kickstarters within a week of each other, I think.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah.
Karl, yours was funded in a day. Ron, yours was funded before it even started.
Yeah, I cheated. On Kickstarter, you can do this thing that's called a soft launch. And what that is you name your starting time, your starting date, but you can make the campaign go live so that backers can support it before that official time. You do that just by making the campaign go live. And then normally what you do is you send that word to the people that have backed your previous campaigns. Hey, the campaign's going live a little bit early. You can help me get off to first start. You can grab some of the limited rewards that might go fast, that sort of thing. But then by the time the campaign goes live, it looks like you're just going like gangbusters. And that worked great the first couple times I did it. The problem for me was that by now I've gotten a lot of my most enthusiastic backers I've asked them to continue to spread the word, share the story, let people know about Trekker, because we're still looking for more readers all the time. And they're so well trained to do that. As soon as I did the soft launch, they started talking about it online. Oh, I just backed the campaign. Can't wait for the. So the soft launch kind of became a hard launch very, very quickly. It kind of got away from me a little bit there. So I probably won't do the soft launches anymore, because I'd much rather have my backers be that enthusiastic and help to spread the word. That is absolutely, and Karl, I know will vouch for this. It's just essential. Karl and I cannot reach enough backers on our own to really make these campaigns fly like they should and be really self-sustaining. So I never want ever to have anybody, be primed to talk about Trekker and say, no, don't talk about it now. That defeats the purpose.
As hard as it is to believe, Ron and I don't have millions of followers on Twitter. We're not like James Gunn or even Gail Simone, believe it or not. I mean, I think on Twitter I've got a couple thousand followers. I don't know. So we need other people helping us get the word out, because that's how we survive. You got to get more people in, because not everyone comes back every time. Unfortunately, I don't understand that myself. I think they should, but yeah, we need to constantly have fresh eyes coming on the project and hopefully liking what they see and supporting us.
I feel like it would be so much easier to promote your stuff if social media wasn't such a pain to deal with. You know how they only don't show your posts to a select number of your friends.
Yeah, I can't figure out how that works. And Ron and I have talked about this a million times. How does the algorithm work on Facebook? And if you mention the word Kickstarter, it like puts that one way to the side so no one sees it. Is that true? Is that urban myth? It's frustrating and really stressful. Really stressful.
Yeah. It is I mean, I agree with everything you both have just said about this. And the only strategy I can think of to deal with this, given the fact that I don't know how to crack the algorithms or whatever, is just to post frequently, post often, assuming that, well, maybe a few eyes will see this one now that haven't seen the other 15 tweets I've already done over the course of the last X number of days, because you just never know. I've had campaigns where I will be down to the last few days of the campaign, and this is like almost a solid month of me doing several posts every day on, say, Facebook, and this happened to me just a lot, like my first or second or third campaign, one of the earlier campaigns, and with just a few days left of the campaign, somebody saw one of my posts on Facebook and commented, how come I'm only hearing about this just now? And this is a guy who is another comics professional, is very active on Facebook, and we are friends on Facebook as well as so if I couldn't reach that guy until day 27 of a 30-day campaign, you just have to use that shotgun approach. You just put stuff out there, realizing that maybe somebody is going to stumble upon it now, or the right person will see it now, and then they will retweet or share or make a comment on it that boosts its visibility. Because every time somebody interacts with a post, it gets seen by more people, at least as I understand the way these things go. So that fan interaction that way, or that reader interaction that way is essential, because you never know when they're going to hit the retweet button and it's going to be seen by somebody that hasn't seen any of the ones that I've done on my own.
Right. I just had the exact same thing happen. A guy who is a Kickstarter creator, his comics are on Kickstarter. And just like yesterday, he said, I didn't know this was live.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow. Ron, I want to ask you about where, at the start of Blood in the Wind, what is the status of Mercy and Molly?
Well, so that follows, of course, right on what happened on the previous story, Reckoning on Rigel, where Mercy and Molly get to this deep space secret base called Rigel, the headquarters of one of the main resistance groups to the oppressive ruling council. Mercy is there because she knows her mother. When she was a kid, Mercy had no clue about this, but her mother had been one of the early agents for Rigel and was sort of legendary. And Mercy doesn't like, she's known about Rigel for a long time, doesn't have a good thing to say about it, because their methods, they're non-lethal methods. She feels that they're very, very idealistic and unrealistic. But then when she found out that her mother was an agent for that, she said, I need to get to the bottom of this. So she goes to Rigel to speak directly to the people running the organization. She gets more information about her mother. She gets some questions answered. She gets a better feel for what Rigel is. And her bottom line is, this isn't for me. It's not, but it is for Molly. Molly is right in line. She's much more idealistic in a lot of ways. So Mercy at the end of Rigel is left with a difficult choice. She knows that Rigel is not the right path for her, but she knows it's a great place for Molly. Molly is safe there. She's, it's a good home for her. So Blood on the Wind takes place where, so Rigel's left with, where do I go now? When do I leave? How do I leave? All that sort of stuff. And Rigel is where those questions get answered. It starts out where Mercy finds, oh, this is a path to go. I need to try this at least and see if this is a way forward for me. So she has to leave Molly at Rigel and take off on her own adventures. And that's, of course, a bit heart-wrenching, but they got a strong bond. Don't worry, fans. Their bonds are stronger than having a little distance separating them for a while is. So that's where the story starts off. Mercy takes off on a new path, a new direction, so to speak, for her on her ongoing quest. And then Molly has her own set of adventures and experiences on Rigel as she begins to find her own way. Molly is she's a music shop owner and a musician herself, and doesn't seem to have anything in common with somebody who's a swashbuckling science fiction bounty hunter, but the two of them have this amazing bond. But part of that is when I brought Molly into the stories and made her so much a part of Mercy's life, a reader could easily ask the question, well, Mercy's this badass bounty hunter. What's the relationship with, what has Molly got to bring to the table? Why is she a compelling enough character for this relationship to work? Well, that's kind of one of the most fun parts of these current stories for me is doing what I can to make sure that Molly, while a completely different kind of character than Mercy, is just as sort of powerful as Mercy is in her own way. So that's a real fun challenge, and I'm loving that. And so happy to see how many readers seem to respond positively to their relationship.
Karl, speaking of relationships, you do have in Possible Jones Grin and Gritty, you did introduce Jimmy.
Yeah.
And you have been reminding us that Jimmy does exist and he's missing. Well, when would we expect to see him next?
Well, you will see flashbacks of him in the Polecat story, because once again, I was using Polecat's story about a relationship that he had for to open up the chance to explore Impossible Jones, her feelings about Jimmy. And one of the things, since Impossible Jones in her history has been a thief, she's had to come to accept the fact that people leave her life suddenly, very suddenly, and without saying goodbye. This is just a common fact of her life. And Jimmy is a little different in that she finds that she finds she can't think about it because it's too painful. It's too painful. He meant too much to her. So it is easier for her to shut that door and not open it. And talking to Polecat keeps opening that door because she keeps reminding what you're saying right now, Polecat reminds me of Jimmy. And it keeps opening that door and she doesn't want, and so that's one of the things that's being dealt with in this story.
And
I mean, I don't think we reach a conclusion, but I think we move forward with it.
and she is completely unaware that he didn't disappear of his own volition, right?
What do you mean by that? I mean, she knows he disappeared. She was in a lot of pain then, but I mean, he fell through a portal, could have been badly hurt. She doesn't know what happened to him.
Yeah.
You know, so, but in many ways, she's, like I said, she's used to this. People, in her life have disappeared because they're wanted by the police or went to jail. They fall out of her life all the time. This is really something she's used to, but this is different. This one is different to her. It feels different to her.
And you also you told me the last time that the inclusion of Krampus was not something that you planned in when this all started.
That like I said, I work very instinctively sometimes, and well, most times, and so he was just going to be this one-off character in the Holly book. But as I was working on the Captain Lightning story, I knew the strange meteorite that they're working with. I knew that was going to end up in the hands of someone who's going to cause problems in parts 3 and 4. I knew that was going to happen. And then I said, well, now all of a sudden parts unknown caller, they went away. But all of a sudden parts 2, 3, and 4 were connected. And so I sat there and I said, how can I connect number 1? Should I connect number 1? And then I said, what if that meteor ended up in the hands of Krampus? And all of a sudden it just seemed like the pieces were laying there just waiting to be picked up and interconnected, and I think that's one of the skills you need as a storyteller. You got to understand and see when those pieces can connect, and you got to understand when they don't connect too. But in this particular case, I think they fit without being forced.
One of the things that I really liked about Impossible Jones 2B is that when Captain Lightning was describing the rock, it was green, I immediately thought, oh hey, it's kryptonite. And immediately Impossible Jones's next line is it kryptonite?
Yeah, please tell me it's kryptonite.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things that's kind of evolved in the book that was not on purpose. Is there is a sort of meta level to it where she seems to be aware of Superman, but of course we're aware of Superman too. We're aware that he's a fictional character, but there is a certain meta level to Impossible Jones, and I don't want to overdo that because it's very tempting to get really clever all the time, and I don't want to do that. But I mean, that was just sitting there waiting to be picked up, wasn't it? So yeah, I did.
You two probably knew this question was coming, but in Impossible Jones 2B, we did see Impossible Jones crossover with Section Zero. Now, I didn't really think Impossible Jones and Section Zero were set in the same world. I don't think Impossible Jones and Trekker are set in the same universe. So, is it in the realm of possibility to perhaps one day see a crossover?
Happen really consider.
I mean, you never say never, right?
Yeah. I mean, it would involve some sort of time travel and who knows what all. But you never would. Like Karl says, you never want to say never.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's in the works. I don't think I can't remember Ron and I mean, we did do a crossover print where Impossible Jones and Trekker were standing next to each other.
Yeah, and I thought the visual worked really well. They look like they could fit in the same reality if we wanted it to. Yeah.
And who would win in a fight?
Well, the Impossible Jones is a super powered character. So he'd probably win.
I think probably Impossible Jones would win in a fight if it came down to it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it would have to be to our own best interests. So
Yeah.
Let's talk about your respective Kickstarters. Trekker Blood in the Wind, as of the time we are recording, has 14 days to go, $50,531 pledged out of a goal of 27,500. Ron, what are your stretch goals here that you would still, want to add on to it?
Right. Well, a few of them are the sort of the familiar ones that I've done on pretty much every campaign. The first one that we unlocked was a bookmark. And in the last few campaigns, I've taken to doing a wraparound cover on the book. So that the wraparound cover is done. But what we'll do now is the back. I mean, so the cover of this one is like this: Mercy is up in the air in this glider dueling at somebody, and the background of it is this icy, snowy, windblown scene. It's a very cool, evocative image, I think. And the back cover, it just continues that scene. It's this mountain in the background that's sort of shaped face, basically like the shape of a howling wolf head or something like that. Anyway, and the colorist that I use on the colors, Jeremy Caldwell, I just thought he did a wonderful job. He uses these painterly effects to make it look really windblown. So I want to make that into a print so people could have the whole thing to look at. When it's a square bound graphic novel, you've got the spine in the middle and everything. You can't really get the whole the whole impression. So anyway, a little mini print of that. And then when the campaigns do really well, I love to start adding on some of these what I consider the more ambitious stretch goals and ones that seem to get a lot of backers excited. Things like enamel pins. I've got some more enamel pin ideas coming. One of Mercy and a different one of Molly. And Karl actually helped me design. I made this seal for the 35th year of Trekker, and it's a cool kind of iconic image. And we're making that a sticker when we hit 750 backers. And then if we go farther along, I would like to have that. I thought that would be a really nice enamel pin design as well. And I'd love to, the last campaign for the first time ever, I made a challenge coin, a Trekker challenge coin, which is this substantial chunk of metal that's engraved, I just think those are really cool artifacts. And I'd love to do that on this campaign too, but those are pricey items and more involved. And I say those for when if the campaign does really well and we have something really to celebrate at the end. So those are some of the big ones I'm shooting for. Sticker sheets, things like that as well. So yeah.
And Karl, as of the time of this recording, it was 21 days to go. It just went up. 24,887 out of 18,000. The goal. Your current stretch goal that you have advertised right now is to give Alex Segura more space for his Even Steven solo story.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. Yeah, I mean, right now the current stretch goal is to add Even Steven solo story, an origin story, another origin story in the back of the book. Alex Segura has agreed to write it. We all want it to be 6 pages. I mean, 6 pages is pretty tight, but we've been able to do some really fun origin stories in 6 pages in the last book, and Alex is up for this one. I mean, Ron will be the first to tell you, right now things are slower on Kickstarter than they've been for us in the recent past, at least, and many reasons around the world for that. But due to that, I mean, we really need $6,000 to get that 6-page story funded. But I was very afraid to approach, a $6,000 gap between stretch goals. So what we're doing is for each $1,000 raised, we add a page that we're going to let Alex write. So when we hit 25, right, is the first time we add a page, 26, 27, 28, 29, and then 30,000 will be all 6 pages. And that means instead of me going a little closer to 30,000, yep, still a little closer to 30,000, for like a week, hopefully less. This way I can go, yay, 1,000, now on to the next page. Yay, 1,000, on to the next page. That's the thinking. Let's see if it works out. And I certainly hope it doesn't stop there. I mean, I hope we go well beyond 30,000. I hope, I've got some more of Giancarlo Bernal's wonderful chibi drawings of our various characters. He's done one of Polecat, the new Impossible Jones, because David redesigned Impossible Jones's outfit. So one of the new Impossible Jones, which is already added to people's swag bag. and Hellhound. So we got chibi stickers in front of us, prints, various prints. And I'd like to do a second Impossible Jones or a second Even Steven backup story. So that would probably be my furthest goal down the way.
With another writer?
Yeah, actually, could be that it's already written. Could be. So I'm really hoping we get to it because it's already written.
Can you give us a
And
hint
I think
as to
this,
who
I
that
think
writer
the writer-
is?
What?
Can you give us a hint as to who that writer is?
No, right now it's Alex's turn. Alex's turn to be in the spotlight. Okay. I think everyone will really love the other writer though. But I am very happy, Alex. I was thrilled when Alex agreed to do it.
Yeah.
So
It seems like he'd be a perfect fit with because of his current book out right now,
Yeah.
right?
yeah, no, I think and he's working with David on another book, The Dusk, which was another Kickstarter book. So
You do have a couple of
Dan Scotty will be drawing Alex's story. So David does want to draw an Even Steven origin. He will draw, if we get to it, the second Even Steven backup.
or
written
is
by
it already drawn?
No, it is not already drawn. David is working on the main book first, believe me.
What was the impetus for the redesign of her costume?
You would have to ask David. I mean, David, I will say David was unhappy that he had given her hip boots and short gloves. It bothered her that the gloves and the boots were not the same length. So I know that bothered him and he wanted it fixed. He also wanted to give her different hair that he wanted to make her look more impish. I mean, he said those words. And I do think the redesign does do that. I mean, she's got kind of a little flare to her shoulder pads and around her hips. And it does have a little more pixie-esque look to it.
And you do have other stretch goals coming, or
Well, I think I just described my big ones.
those are the big ones.
We have to see is, I had a list of stretch goals, but I mean, I can't say I have anything big planned. I mean, Ron keeps talking about the challenge coin, and I'd like to maybe do an Impossible Jones challenge coin, but I don't think I get really hung up on how does it relate to the book I'm doing, and like if there was magic coins involved in this book, I would be like, ooh, we're going to do a challenge coin of one of the magic coins, but I don't have any coins being used in the story, so I don't know. And I'm kind of saving I got ideas for the enamel pins, but I'm saving that. So probably not this time.
You got a couple of variant covers for this one, Stuart Eminem.
Oh no, the variant covers I'm so thrilled by. How could I forget that? Thank you for mentioning. Bill Sankovich and Stuart Eminem. I mean, I'm stunned just saying the names. I'm stunned, and what they produced is amazing. I mean, I go to sleep very happy thinking about those covers.
You've gotten a lot of great artists on your to do covers and even pinups in the back.
Yeah, no, I've been very lucky. And it's probably has a lot to do with this thick file of blackmail that I have. So no, I mean, people are very generous in comics. People are extremely generous in comics.
Ron, do you have access to that thick file of blackmail?
No, Karl's much more ruthless than I am. He won't hesitate, but I'm too nice. No, but Karl's right though. The people within we both think of it as the Kickstarter creator community. There's a lot of people making comics on Kickstarter that are very supportive of one another. And within the larger comics community, there's a lot of cartoonists that they know what a struggle it can be to make your own way and try to do your own projects, or even if you're working for DC or Marvel, it ain't easy a lot of times. So when somebody could use a little bit of a helping hand, somebody pitch into a little art for them or something like that, it's amazing how many people will be thrilled to step up and help out with that sort of stuff.
Is it also because everybody, I get the feeling that comics is the art form where it gets more people who love it really want to make it, so therefore as a result most people who make it are making it because they love it.
Oh
yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Yeah,
you don't do it for the money. That's for sure.
Lord knows. Yeah.
Karl, you have gone on the record saying that you, in a dream world, you would like Ursula Cabrero to play Impossible Jones,
Do you have connections? Is that what you're
and
saying?
and Kristen Bell as Holly Days. Ron, who would
I
you
think
like?
those are dream casts. If you ask me.
Ron, in the modern day setting, who would you like to play Mercy and Molly?
That actress, Ruby Rose, the actress that played Batwoman in the first the
Yeah.
TV series. Somebody mentioned her a while ago as being, and I thought, wow, she's got the right. So she's got both the right sort of facial structure, I think, and it's sort of, how to put it, the right energy or something. That she would be a phenomenal Mercy St. Clair, I felt. But I can't pick up a phone and dial her or her agent or the producer that would make these things actually happen. But yeah, ideal world, she would probably be right at the top of the list.
What about Molly?
Molly, that's a for me, that's a harder person to cast. The actress Jewel, who played Kaylee on Firefly,
That's a
would
good
be
one.
would be a good choice, I think. For I remember I was rewatching Firefly a little while ago, and I said, "Well, she just, everything that comes out of her mouth sounds very Molly-esque to me." So it's a lot of comments that when you first hear them, it almost sounds sort of naive. But as you get to know her, you realize, no, she's just really, really wise. And so that might be a way to go.
Do you guys have anything else you want to say about your respective Kickstarters or each other's respective Kickstarters? Or
I'll just say this is my goal is to raise more money than Ron. And my goal for Ron is for him to raise so much money I can't meet my goal.
Well, that's hard to beat. I guess I would just say, I think, I know it's true for me, and I'm pretty sure it's true for Karl as well. When you set a funding goal on a Kickstarter, you've got two possible ways you can go. You can set the goal where you're going to cover all the costs and make this a self-sustaining project. You pay yourself. If you're a professional like I am and like Karl is, we're not doing this as a hobby or as a side gig. This is our careers. So if we want to keep doing these, we need to make enough money that it pays us for all of that. Printing the books, shipping the books, writing the books, drawing the books, coloring the books, running the campaign. So it's a lot. It's an awful lot. It's far more than a full-time job. So you could set your funding goal, your initial funding goal for that, and that's whatever it is, $45,000, $55,000, $65,000. The chances of hitting that, it's very dodgy. And if you don't hit that on Kickstarter, you don't get one dime. You run a 30-day campaign. If you come up $5 short, you don't get a penny. So that's a huge risk to take. The other risk is the one that I take, and I think Karl is pretty much the same. I set my initial funding goal to cover the cost of printing the book and shipping the book, physically making the book and getting it into backers' hands. That's great. If I can do that, I know I've got another Trekker story out there. But that doesn't pay me for the months of time that I'm laboring on working on the book and stuff. That's what the stretch goals do. They get extra tchotchkes added to the campaign, which are great and fun, but some of that money also goes into my pocket so I can keep eating oatmeal and keeping the lights on. So when your campaign hits that funding goal, a lot of people think, oh, great, it's done. Everything else now is gravy. Well, it's gravy for the backers because they're going to get their book. It's not gravy for Karl and me. It's meat and potatoes. It's what keeps us going. So yeah, I want our campaigns to both do phenomenally well because we're still on the quest to making these things self-sustaining. And the hashtag I often use is more Trekker more often. And that's the non-hidden agenda. I'm very overt about that. The better the campaigns do, the more backers we have, the more funds come in, the more it frees up my time to devote myself exclusively to doing this and doing the best Trekker stories I can. And I know Karl feels exactly the same way about Impossible Jones. We just want to do the best stories we can. It makes me super happy, and I know that the readers are responding well to it. So onward and upward. That's what I say.
Thank you, both of you. Good luck with your Kickstarters, and I cannot wait to read them.
Great.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you, Karl. Good to see you, Duy.